He loved his mother, at least, at first. She had poisoned an emperor to put him on the throne. She had manipulated advisors, senators, and generals to ensure her son's survival. She had given everything to make him the most powerful man on earth. And in 59 AD, he sent men to kill her. Not enemies, not rivals, his mother. And when the first attempt failed, he sent more. This is not a story about a monster. This is a story about a system. A system so psychologically consuming that it turned the most powerful position in the ancient world into the most psychologically dangerous place a human being could occupy. And understanding exactly how it did that will change how you think about power forever. To understand what the Roman emperor's position did to people, you first need to understand what the position actually was. Not what it looked like from the outside, what it felt like from the inside. Imagine this. You are the most powerful person on earth. You control an empire of 70 million people, from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Mesopotamia. Your word is law. Your image is on every coin. Your name is spoken in temples. Generals command armies in your name. Senators govern provinces in your name. Priests perform rituals in your name. Now, look around the room you are sitting in. Every person in it, your advisors, your generals, your family, your servants, has something to gain from your death. Your general becomes the most powerful military commander in history the moment you are gone. Your son inherits the empire. Your advisor gains influence over your successor. Even your servant could sell information about your vulnerabilities for more money than they would earn in a lifetime. You are surrounded, not by loyal supporters, but by people whose interests are served by your death, and you cannot leave. Because outside the palace is an empire of 70 million people, many of whom have lost someone to your wars, your taxes, your decisions. This is not power, this is a trap, and every Roman emperor walked into it willingly. Because from the outside, it looked like the greatest prize in the world. From the inside, it was something else entirely. The first Roman emperor, Caesar Augustus, was the only one who truly understood what he was building, and what he was building terrified him. Augustus had watched what happened to Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, surrounded by people who called him friend, who shook his hand, who attended his dinners, who stabbed him 23 times. On the floor of the Senate, on the Ides of March 44 BCE, Augustus took that lesson and built an entire system around it. He refused the title of king. He refused the title of dictator. He called himself princeps, first citizen, not above the republic, just first among equals. It was a performance, a carefully constructed psychological fiction designed to make his power feel less threatening, less absolute, less like the kind of thing that gets you stabbed 23 times. And it worked. Augustus ruled for 40 years, the longest reign of any Roman emperor, not because he was the most powerful, because he was the most psychologically intelligent. He understood that the moment people feel that your power has no limit, they start thinking about how to limit it themselves. So he pretended it had limits and lived. But here is the tragedy of Augustus. He spent 40 years building a system of absolute power, disguised as a republic. And when he died, what he left behind was the absolute power, not the disguise. And the people who inherited it were not Augustus. Tiberius was everything Augustus was not. Where Augustus was warm and politically gifted, Tiberius was cold, blunt, and deeply uncomfortable with people. Where Augustus built alliances, Tiberius saw alliances as future betrayals that hadn't happened yet. He was not wrong to be suspicious. He was simply the first emperor to fully feel the weight of what the position actually meant. For the first decade of his reign, Tiberius governed Rome effectively. The empire ran, the borders held, the finances stabilized. But underneath the competent administration, something was happening to him. He began to see threats everywhere. A senator who asked too many questions was investigating a conspiracy. A general who won too decisive a victory was building a personal following. A family member who was too popular with the people was positioning for succession, and one by one, he began removing them, not always through execution, sometimes through exile, sometimes through quiet accusation, sometimes through the law of treason, which under Tiberius expanded to cover almost anything that could be interpreted as disrespect to the emperor. And then, in 26 AD, he left Rome entirely. He moved to the island of Capri, and he never came back. He governed the largest empire on earth from an island because an island had only one approach by sea, and he could see anyone coming. In Rome, he could not see everyone coming, and that uncertainty was unbearable. He died on Capri 12 years later, having not set foot in Rome for the last decade of his reign, the most powerful man in the world, hiding on an island from everyone who served him. Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, known to history as Caligula, Little Boots, a nickname given to him as a child by his father's soldiers, because he used to wear a tiny military uniform and march around the camp, and the soldiers thought it was charming. He was 4 years old. By the time Tiberius was done with his family, Caligula had watched his mother exiled, his brothers imprisoned and starved to death, his entire family dismantled, one member at a time, by the paranoid emperor on the island. Caligula survived by being seen as harmless, by performing submission so completely that Tiberius never felt threatened by him. He watched everything, survived the fretting, survived, and when Tiberius died and Caligula took the throne, the Roman people celebrated. He was young, charming, the son of a beloved general. For the first 7 months, he was everything Rome had hoped for. Then something shifted, and here is where the psychology becomes genuinely important. Because historians spent centuries describing Caligula as simply mad, insane, a monster who appeared from nowhere. Modern psychological analysis suggests something different. Caligula was not mad in the clinical sense. He was a person who had spent his entire childhood learning one lesson above all others: that power is the only protection, that the people who love you can be taken from you at any moment, that the only way to survive is to be the most dangerous person in the room. And then he was given unlimited power, with no internal framework for how to use it responsibly, because nobody had ever taught him that. They had only taught him how to survive. What followed was not madness. It was the logical conclusion of a childhood spent in terror, handed absolute authority, with nothing to stop it. And then there was Nero, who began by genuinely not wanting any of it. Nero was 16 years old when he became emperor. He wanted to paint, to perform, to write poetry. He loved music with a genuine passion that his advisors considered deeply embarrassing for an emperor of Rome. His mother Agrippina had poisoned the previous emperor, his stepfather Claudius, to put Nero on the throne, not because Nero asked her to, because Agrippina understood power better than almost anyone in Roman history, and she intended to run the empire through her son. For the first years of Nero's reign, she largely did. She appeared on official coins beside him. She sat behind a curtain during Senate meetings, listening to every decision. She managed his advisors, his generals, his schedule. She had given him the throne, and she intended to collect. Now, put yourself in Nero's position. You are emperor of Rome, in name, but every decision is scrutinized by a woman who poisoned your predecessor and would not hesitate to replace you if you stopped being useful to her. The person most responsible for your survival is also the person most capable of ending it. What do you do? What is the system that Tiberius perfected and Caligula accelerated tell you to do? You eliminate the threat before it eliminates you. In 59 AD, Nero had his mother killed, and the Senate sent him a letter of congratulations, not because they were monsters, because in the psychology of Roman imperial power, eliminating threats was not a crime. It was governance. Step back from the individual stories now and look at the pattern. Augustus, consumed by the need to disguise power, to make it feel safe enough that nobody would take it from him. Tiberius, consumed by paranoia until he governed an empire from hiding. Caligula, the product of a childhood spent in terror, given unlimited power with no framework for restraint. Nero, a young man who wanted something else entirely, ground down by a system that offered only one survival strategy: kill or be killed. Trust no one. Eliminate threats before they materialize. These are not 4 different stories. This is one story, told 4 times, with 4 different human beings running the same psychological program to the same devastating conclusion. The Roman imperial system did not select for wisdom. It did not select for fortune. It did not select for humanity. It selected for one thing only: survival. And survival, in a system where everyone around you benefits from your death, looks like paranoia, looks like cruelty, looks like killing the people you love before they kill you first. The emperors didn't corrupt the system corrupted the emperors. Every single time. Here is what the historical record actually shows. The Roman emperors who are remembered as the most brutal were almost never the ones who wanted power most. Augustus wanted safety. Tiberius wanted to be left alone. Caligula wanted to survive. The monsters of Roman history were not created by ambition. They were created by a system that took ordinary human psychological vulnerabilities, fear, loneliness, the need for safety, the desire for control, and amplified them, without limit, without check, without anyone who could look an emperor in the eye and tell him the truth, because telling an emperor the truth had become one of the most dangerous things a person in Rome could do. Modern psychology has a name for what the Roman imperial system created: an environment of epistemic isolation, a condition where the most powerful person receives only the information that the people around them calculate is safe to deliver, which means the more powerful you become, the less accurately you see reality. The more you need good information, the less of it reaches you. The higher you climb, the more alone you become inside a version of the world that the people below you have quietly constructed to keep you from destroying them. The Roman emperors were not uniquely evil. They were uniquely isolated. And isolation, given enough time, given enough power, given enough fear, does something to the human mind that the Romans had no framework to understand and that we are still learning to recognize. In the powerful people of our own time, the Roman Empire lasted, in various forms, for over 1,000 years, through dozens of emperors, many brilliant, many brutal, many both, and across all of them the same pattern repeated, not because Romans were uniquely flawed, because the system was. A system that concentrates power without distributing accountability does not produce wise leaders. It produces isolated ones, an isolated power, without the friction of honest opposition, without the correction of genuine consequence, without the humanity of people who will tell you when you are wrong, drifts, always, in the same direction, toward cruelty, toward the elimination of anyone who represents a threat, real or imagined. The Roman emperors are gone, but the psychological dynamic they lived inside has never disappeared. Every system that concentrates power in the hands of one person or one group without accountability runs the same program, different costumes, same outcome. And here is the question worth carrying, not about ancient Rome, but about right now. What happens to people when you remove every external check on their behavior? What does power do to a human being when nothing pushes back? The Romans showed us the answer in 4 emperors, in 4 lifetimes, in 4 variations of the same devastating story. And if you think the Roman system was the darkest version of this pattern, wait until you discover what the Mongols did with the same understanding of human psychology, but none of Rome's restraint. That is exactly where we are going next.